Catherine Castle from Rock Paper Shotgun, and our next developer session on the EGX Theatre stage is about the state of VR. I'm going to be your host for the next half an hour or so, and joining me today are to discuss all things virtual reality are three members of Dream Reality Interactive, the makers of upcoming VR game Arca's Path. So we have Laura Dodds, the head of art. We also have Sitara Schefter, who's head of production, and finally Albert Bentel, the studio's creative lead. Welcome, everyone. So let's sit. Okay, so before we dive into what you guys have been up to in the world of VR, I thought we'd just kind of have a small chat about kind of the background of who Dream Reality Interactive is as a studio, where it came from, what your goals are, and a little bit about what you each do.
Sure.
Okay, should we start with you, Sarah?
Yeah. Should we talk about the studio first?
Yeah, sounds good.
So Dream Reality Interactive was founded by Dave Ranyard, who is the former head of Sony London Studios, and he'd been working on some VR experiences, including PlayStation VR Worlds, and he realised that there was actually a real area and speciality to delve into here, and a real opportunity to go and explore this new technology. So Dream Reality Interactive was founded, and we've been making VR experiences now for a couple of years. We're 2 years old.
Okay. Congratulations.
Thank you. And yeah, we are founded on a couple of really important things. So one thing that he really wanted us to do is to be at the forefront of VR. So we're making the best VR games and experiences across the world. We want to be the best software developers. But also he was really keen to build a very diverse studio and a diverse team, because we really believe that diverse teams make the best products.
Yeah. Cool. Great. Albert, what's your role in Arca's Path?
So I was one of the first people that joined DRI. I also worked at Sony with Dave previously on PlayStation VR Worlds. So he got me in quite early, and basically we started prototyping stuff right at the get-go. It was just me working with a coder. We started working on some different mechanics around ball rolling games, and at that stage he was also quite keen that as a studio we started to develop our own IP, which is where I sort of went into kind of coming up with some world building ideas, and developed the original story for Arca's Path, which is quite different from what we've got now, but it's been a kind of long process of, you know, chopping and changing bits of story, and it's taken us quite a long time, but we've now got to where we are with the story for Arca's Path. But so it was kind of Dave's vision from the beginning that we kind of did a sort of sci-fi based ball rolling game.
Okay, cool. How about you, Laura?
So I joined DRI just under 2 years ago. When there were only 5 of us, I joined as an artist, and I'm now head of arts, so working with the other artists on the look and feel of the project and working with the visuals and the aesthetics.
Oh, great. Well, I think we've got a small demo of Arca's Path to show you, which I think Albert will be demoing for us. So we'll let you get that set up.
Should just start.
There we go. That's a load.
Yeah?
Thanks, back on there. Okay, so as we've just seen, Arca's Path has got quite a unique control method in that there's no controller really, you're just tilting your head. How did you come up with that control scheme and why is it a good fit for VR?
You want to say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know whether people could tell exactly from the video what was going on. What you should have been able to see is that there's a small triangle that is projected into the level. That triangle is actually being moved by the direction of my head. And then the ball, which is actually the character, is rolling after that triangle. So essentially it's a physics game. The ball behaves completely in a physically, accurate way. And what you're doing as a player is you're looking and it's adding force to the ball. So the ball is essentially chasing after this triangle. So it's quite a physics-based gameplay. But because you're just doing it with your head, you've got like a really high degree of fidelity.
Yeah.
Because you've got really like fine movement just by using your neck. It was kind of, we lost tracking a few times and the camera was jumping around a bit. That's the only reason I was holding a controller.
Yeah.
Because that resets it, but actually you can play the entire game just using your head. And the reason that we wanted to do that is because right at the beginning of the kind of development, we didn't really know which platform we were going to be targeting. We were still trying to look around for funding and things like that, so we didn't really know if we could rely on giving the player a controller of any particular type. So we go, let's just cut the controller out completely. Let's just make something really simple that works just using your head. And in a weird way, it was a really good challenge for us because it meant we have to find something that works really in a unique way for VR. It's something you can't do on a kind of console.
Yeah.
And I think actually as a result of giving ourselves that constraint, it's turned into quite an interesting mechanic, and it's something that is very quick to teach, and it's quite gettable.
Yeah, so I guess we really wanted to make a game as well that's quite accessible. So, some people have difficulties holding controllers, and especially, if you've been playing games for a while, you might get tired of holding a controller, where actually you're literally just sat with a VR headset on, and it's all just about your head movement. So there's no controller input at all, which means it's accessible to a much bigger audience.
Yeah. Yeah, and kind of, is it difficult to do that as opposed to making a game that does have normal controller kind of controls, as it were?
Not really. I mean, essentially, like the way these things work is it takes an orientation of a camera in a game, and it takes the position. All you're doing, and it's only the same as taking an up or a down on a thumbstick. It's not vastly different from that. Basically, you're just taking that thing and applying it to some variable in the game. So it's just connecting numbers up.
Yeah.
I guess interestingly as well, quite early on, this was one of the mechanics we solidified very early on. So we did a lot of user testing and found that people could just pick it up and play it, and they understood what to do.
Yeah.
So I think we designed the rest of our game around that.
Yeah. And kind of how long roughly have you been working on it, and kind of what were the inspirations behind not only the kind of the ball rolling, but also kind of like setting and all that sort of stuff that goes with it?
Well, I guess the game's gone through quite a few iterations. I think in terms of aesthetics, it sort of followed the development of the narrative. So in its latest incarnation, it's very much a sort of sci-fi fairy tale. And we looked at some like MGM musicals like Wizard of Oz and kind of the yellow brick roads, which you see kind of little pathways and gardens, but it also has this kind of artificiality to it, and this kind of glitchy aesthetic. And Anna Holland-Rake, our senior artist, kind of took inspiration from Vaporwave and kind of getting those pastel colour schemes in and that kind of glitchy aesthetic. It gets a bit darker in tone, I guess it would be fair to say, so something which starts out as a very pleasant, comfortable world to spend time in, but it's got that kind of light and shade as it develops throughout the game.
I think because we kind of felt like we kind of struck gold a bit with this really universal kind of mechanic and this kind of control system that works on all headsets and can be played by lots of different people.
Yeah.
And we kind of wanted to keep the story almost just as simple as that as well. So like you'll notice that there isn't any kind of dialogue. It's all told through images and kind of the motion of those little cutscenes that you can see. We kind of, that was something that was kind of important for us, is to kind of keep it simple but keep it really clear and keep it accessible.
And I guess as well, the soundtrack's been something that's really important to us, because we wanted to make something that really was immersive, and sounds absolutely vital to that. So the soundtrack's been composed by Rafferty, who's interesting as well. And that's been good fun. And in terms of how long it's been in development, well, actually the ball mechanic was prototyped very early on. When DRI first started up, we were prototyping all sorts of mechanics and actually realised this is quite fun. But it went into full production when Rebellion signed it back in January, so it's been about 9 months of fun making this game.
Yeah, cool. And sort of, how would you say, kind of making a VR game, how does that differ to creating like a more traditional console or PC title?
I guess in some ways, making a game can be similar across any platform. So even if you're making a console or a mobile or a VR game, you're always working with certain restraints. So console provides you with some restraints, VR headsets provide you with different restraints, and it's all about designing around those constraints.
I would say with each different platform there's different opportunities and challenges, and at the beginning of any project we'll kind of be doing tech specs and understanding the capabilities of those platforms, but also where we can innovate. And I think because VR is still relatively new medium, there's just so much untapped potential, so it's quite an exciting media to develop for.
But I guess even in VR there's different constraints, because obviously you've got like your console headsets, your PC headsets, you've got PlayStation VR, you've got Oculus Rift, but then you have your mobile headsets too. So it might be that, even with Arca's Path, so we are releasing on console and mobile platforms, but there's some things that we've had to do slightly different on different platforms. So you have to make different optimizations, for instance, on mobile platforms.
Cool. And sort of like sometimes, when playing VR games, a few people might experience kind of a little bit of motion sickness. Like, how do you test for that and make sure that your game isn't going to make people horribly ill?
Obviously, for this game, it's you might look at it and go, well, you're moving the camera around, which we are. And initially, like straight off the bat, when VR sort of started becoming a bit more mainstream, that was a kind of big no-no. Don't move the camera. You're going to make people feel really sick. But I think as the technology is improving a bit and sort of the design practices are kind of becoming a bit better understood, you can actually move people around and it won't make people feel sick. Like, we very rarely get anyone experiencing motion sickness with this, and it's sort of, we're moving the camera at kind of quite a lot of speed and up and down and like falling off platforms and all sorts of things. So I think what I would say is that in this you've always got a fixed point of reference. The board is always exactly the same distance and position away from the camera, so you've always got that thing that you're kind of focused on and anchored to, which helps massively. We never rotate the camera, so that's something that is still that does cause people problems. So like, we're aware of the rules, but as long as you're aware of them, you can still like break them and like mess around with them or tweak them slightly. We've done loads of work on making sure it doesn't make people feel ill though. It's like really important. If people put it on and feel sick, then they're not going to play the game. So.
Yeah. Do you have to kind of, is it a case of just getting lots of people to test it and see how they react?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
I think, and also if even some people who are really experienced with VR, they'll still feel ill. Some people are they're just built that way, I guess. Like, so if you've got someone in your studio who you know is prone to it, them test it.
Yeah.
Sometimes me.
Yeah, sometimes it's.
Also, since we're developing, we're playing it all the time. I mean, I don't think we'd be able to stomach developing a really uncomfortable game if every time there's bug I need to play test and then I'm feeling sick. So. I think quite early on in the process, you end up with quite a comfortable experience.
Well, I guess we designed, we took it into design consideration at the very beginning as well. Our head of design actually has done a lot of research into motion sickness when VR first came out. So there's lots of things where he said, we can do these things, but we need to work around these things. And I think that was a really useful baseline to set. But I think it's fair to say, as developers, you keep learning as well. So motion sickness is starting to become a thing of the past, and more VR users are becoming more comfortable with VR as well. So hopefully we'll see a downfall in motion sickness over the next few years.
Cool. And sort of, do you feel like now that we've had a couple of years of, say, VR being like the headsets are been available for a couple of years now, and obviously, the mobile headsets, they've kind of, shot through the roof in terms of sales. Are the development lessons that, that have kind of evolved during that time, do you think that there are now a kind of solid set of rules that everyone kind of knows, or is it still an evolving process?
I think it's evolving still.
Yeah.
It's I don't know, to me personally it feels like it's less about what you can't do now, more about you can do more stuff. It's not it's becoming a bit freer, a bit more open about what you can do. Or maybe it's just a case of you, as developers, you just know you would never do that because that would be crazy. It's not even something that you have to be told not to do. You just, it's a different, it's similar in loads of ways to other gaming mediums, but actually it is quite unique, and you kind of just, as a developer, you go, you know what works for this platform now, and you play to its strengths.
Have there been any other kind of VR titles over the years that have really caught your attention, that have sort of stood out as something special?
Well, every few weeks in the studio we do like a competitor analysis, and our head of design brought to our attention Static. So this game where you've got you're kind of in a laboratory and people are kind of experimenting on you, I suppose. It sounds unpleasant, but it isn't. And you have your hands locked in a box and you've got to kind of solve these puzzles. I thought that was really a brilliant, incredibly designed project that was very inspiring.
I've recently bought my first Vive, which is crazy. I've been making VR stuff for like 5 years. I started, the first VR headset I owned was a Oculus DK1 when I was a student, and was making stuff for it back then. And since then I've just used VR headsets at work, and I've only just 5 years later finally bought my own VR headset. So I've just got like a huge back catalogue of games that I've been going through, which has been great fun. I've been sort of playing all this stuff I've been wanting to play for ages. So like, just been playing like some Fallout VR and Doom VR, and the Rick and Morty game is really hilarious. There's loads of good stuff out there.
How about you?
And actually, I mean, if I'm completely honest, recently I've been playing Spider-Man, so that's not a VR game, but that's what I've been into recently.
And sort of how well, let's say, now that we've kind of had a couple of years with VR, like how do you think that the industry as a whole is doing? Like, is it doing well? Is it a healthy environment?
I think it's fair to say, it's been around for a few years. It's still developing. I think with any industry, you see this initial boom, you see this initial spike, and then you see a little bit of a drop. But then it steadily starts growing again, and I think it's fair to say the VR industry and the development side of it as well is improving, and that's why we've got publishers backing us like Rebellion now, who are coming to sign these VR games. We've just had the release of Oculus Go, which was a headset obviously, which you don't have to take your mobile and stick it in something, you don't have to connect it to a PC, it's really accessible. And also just, there's experiences that are starting to be outside of gaming too. So, last year we worked on a project called Hold the World in association with Sky and Factory 42, and that featured Sir David Attenborough. And that's great because it's this educational kind of experience that's been featured in the Natural History Museum, and people that have never used VR before are able to now go and get their hands on VR and play it for the first time. So it's almost starting to become more of the norm.
And do you think...
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, Albert was actually, we were talking about this earlier, it's just such a good space for indies and startups. We're a company, we're only 2 years old. We've, Hold the World, and also Arca's has given us the opportunity to work for Rebellion. So I think it's a really good space for young companies to kind of make a name for themselves and kind of grow faster than they might do if they were sort of competing against larger companies.
I think there's still sort of, for some of the bigger publishers, there's still a bit of risk involved in terms of how much they would normally spend on a project. The chance of them getting the same level of return that they're used to is quite low. So they kind of, in a quite a convenient way, they've almost taken a step back and allowed the smaller companies to like run in and fill that void. And And there's a lot of very small companies who are doing incredibly well in the VR space, which is great for the industry.
Yeah. Do you think like mobile headsets like the Oculus Go, do you think that they will kind of spur VR kind of forward even faster?
Absolutely, because it means that, now you don't have to faff about plugging a VR headset into a PC. You don't have to, like I said, faff about getting your phone out and sticking it in. You literally pick up a headset and put it on and it's ready to go, and it's great. We've seen a lot of people, just come into the studio and try it on and go, oh, where are all the wires? And it's like, actually they're on, and you can just put it on and play, and it makes it more accessible to everyone.
Yeah. And sort of, do you think that like having kind of like the rather, is it kind of developing for, say, Oculus Go, are there different development constraints, say, than developing for the Oculus Rift? Like, is it a different, how do you have to kind of tailor the experience for the different platforms?
I think there are.
There are, I mean, like, again, with Arca's path, because we know that we wanted to target both, we were like, we can't take advantage of the kind of positional tracking that you get with some of the headsets. Because we don't want to have the gameplay be different on the different platforms. So I guess if you were developing something that's purely for the Go or the Gear, which doesn't have positional, definitely have to take that into account.
Yeah.
And from an art perspective, each different bit of hardware is going to have different capabilities. So we'll do different tech specs in terms of like poly counts, and also there might be things like the color space is different, and so something looks like very vivid green, and then it's actually quite dull colors in another platform. So there's, on an art side, I think you want to know up front what platforms you're developing for.
Yeah.
But it's just the same as with any other media, really. There's different kind of opportunities and constraints.
And sort of, where do you think VR games will go from here?
I think they're going to keep getting better, because you've got more developers now working in the VR space. There's more people learning. So it's like with any new technology, right? Things keep getting better, things keep improving. And I think that's absolutely true of VR, and that's what's going to keep happening. I think we're going to see some really great AAA quality titles coming out to VR as well over the next few years.
Yeah.
Particularly as the hardware gets better as well. You're seeing the likes of Oculus releasing new headsets. That Sony are going to be working in that space too. So over time, everything is going to keep improving and making for greater experiences, I think.
Another thing we really enjoyed is the sort of location-based experiences as well. So we went and did the Void, Star Wars in Westfield, and that was really exciting. Kind of the challenges of a physical space and how you can go back and forth, but it feels like a totally different space virtually. So
yeah, I guess it's, in a weird way, it's like any kind of computer system, really. You'll have your like small mobile phone, or you'll have your like big at home, like powerful PC, or you'll have your out of home stuff. I guess like arcades. There's kind of different sectors within. There's different uses for VR, and each of them will have its own kind of form factor, I guess.
Yeah.
Even with regards to what you're talking about, like the Void experience that we went to do. The fact that Star Wars, such a big IP, is in the middle of a shopping centre, and you can put on a VR headset and a backpack, and we got to run around like stormtroopers and shoot each other. That's great fun, and the fact that that was open to the public, people just get to go shopping, and instead actually running around as a stormtrooper meeting Darth Vader, which is awesome. So that means things are getting better, and I think location-based is definitely going to grow as well over the next few years.
Yeah, great. I think on that note, we've got a couple of minutes for questions from the audience. If you have any, if you could make your way to the microphone in that nice little spotlight there, that would be great. And a mic, there we go, there's a mic being brought out. And then if you could direct your questions to a member of the team, then I'll hopefully be able to answer them.
Well, firstly, for that demo, it was the first example I've seen of using the headset really as a controller, as opposed to just a new perspective on anything. And in doing that, you've made quite possibly one of the most accessible games in the world in regards to people who might not have full hand coordination disabilities up to almost full paralysis. And firstly, congrats on that, that's absolutely awesome to see. And in the context of that, is there consideration, or would it be something you could include in future developments for visual processing? Because there's a lot of people who deal with difficulty in visual processing, especially if they're on the autism spectrum with some condition. And VR actually exacerbates that a lot because it's so, well, virtual as opposed to on a screen. And the way your visual works, that kind of glitchy aesthetic of things popping in, lends itself very, very well, in my opinion, to being able to be toned down or scaled up, to be slower or simplified. And then if you included something like that, you could probably have something that just about everyone on the planet with functioning eyes could play. Is that something you'd look into in future projects, or be looking at as a future development on this one?
I mean, it's a really good question. It's something that we, like you said, the way that those things appear and like grow like that, that's completely, you know, an aesthetic choice. And if we were to take that away, you know, the gameplay would still be exactly the same. We wouldn't lose anything from that. So there's absolutely no reason why we couldn't do that. It isn't currently something that we've kind of provisioned for. I mean, we're kind of, I guess we're a startup and we're kind of trying to.
I've worked with you guys before, so yeah. I worked on Hold the World.
And I think maybe in terms of our story beats as well, we were very conscious that we wanted to tell the story in pictures, and so we would need localization and to try and make aesthetic choices which were as accessible as the gameplay. But I think some of the points that you raised would be things we definitely want to consider in the future.
I guess putting in specific settings that you actually can go and switch on and off. That go, this is much more easy for certain people with certain, you know,
That's exactly a project I worked on a couple of years ago in the Netherlands. You had a slider in the settings that could not change your aesthetic or take it away, but would simply reduce the amount of pop-up room, reduce the amount of texture detail, and your aesthetic suited that, and you've already got an incredibly accessible game. So kudos on that. That's something I wanted to bring up.
Yeah,
that's really good question.
Thank you.
Something to think about. Cheers.
Okay, next question.
Given we're thinking about VR and the state of VR in 2018, I wanted to know if there's sort of things that either stylistically or developmentally sort of weren't possible in 2017, 2016, and sort of how it's looking compared to VR of a year or two ago.
I guess at the moment, like compared to headsets a few years ago, the level of resolution is kind of going to gradually improve. So I think, from an art perspective, you know, you have to be quite conscious of putting in. I mean, personally, whenever I've made stuff in the past, I've found it to work quite well if you have quite big, chunky colours with quite kind of clear definition between them. Just because if you have really fine detail, that some of it can get lost in the sort of because of the resolution of the screen. So I guess over time, as the hardware, you know, changes, you'll be able to do much more like on an artistic level. You'll be able to put some of that detail back in that we've had to take away in the past.
Okay, so it's about fidelity and graphical quality rather than sort of, obviously the control system's different, but it's about kind of graphics again, basically.
Yeah, I think so.
I guess the resolution's improved as well, and you know, things like we were talking about motion sickness earlier. I guess bad resolution contributes to motion sickness. So you know, with things like that improving, it means that it makes our design constraints a little bit more flexible as well. Gives us a little bit more room to work with.
Cool. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Thank you. We've got probably time for one or two more questions. So yeah, carry on.
So you guys mentioned about the HVR backpacks for the Void, about walking around and making it a little bit easier for people to use it in the general public. Have you guys thought about using AR for mobile apps as well? About making the game you guys have workable on iPhones and Android as well?
Well, it's a good question. We actually did very early on when ARKit was being sort of developed. We were like, oh, this is a really cool thing. and we actually tried to take the exact same mechanic and put it into AR. So, and why that completely failed was because, of course, in this game, the camera is attached to the ball. So as the ball rolls away, your phone isn't going to go stuck to the ball and fly out of your hand, obviously. Like, the ball's just going to roll off and you're never going to see it again. So we scrapped that very quickly. But as a studio, we continued to look at AR and staying in the kind of realms of ball rolling. We developed a game called Orbu, which we released. It was our first sort of
first original IP. December last year.
Which is basically like mini golf with these cute little animals in this mini golf course that will appear on your table or in your garden or wherever. And it's essentially like a slingshot mechanic, a bit like Angry Birds, and you're just knocking these little creatures around a golf course. So AR is something we're really fascinated by and we want to continue to work on. I mean, really, we call DRI an AR and a VR studio. So yeah.
Although I think with Arca's Path, one thing to kind of mention is obviously the story for us was quite something that we really wanted to push. We really wanted to make something that was immersive. So it's all about you taking this journey as this girl into a simulated world. And I think that would be a hard thing to recreate in AR, because in VR you are in this simulated world, whereas if you're playing it on AR, it's about what you see in the phone, what you see through the lens of the phone. So it'd be hard to recreate that experience as well. But yeah, we went for VR.
Cool. I think this is final question.
I work for an education company, and my team and I came here today to get some information for our company magazine. So I'd just like to know would you say there's a market for a degree in VR development and design?
Look, we already have degrees, for games development and design, and we're seeing some incredible students coming out of that, taking great roles on in the industry. And that's fantastic, because it means we're getting more people from different backgrounds coming into the industry as well. I think it's really important to have a fundamental knowledge in games rather than just solely in VR, but I think a lot of these games courses offer you the opportunity now to go and learn about VR as well, so have these VR specific modules. But who knows, maybe in 5 or 10 years time, the VR market will have taken off so much and there'll be this huge market that we need to specialise, people that are just specialised in VR, that need degrees in VR. But I guess even with games, you don't need a degree. I think there's people that come from all sorts of different backgrounds as well. So I think it's an open question.
Yeah, on the other side, if you were studying specifically in VR, a lot of those design principles and aesthetic choices are universal and will translate over back to other mediums. So I don't think if you worked primarily in VR that you're shutting the door for transitioning into other games either.
Yeah, I agree.
Great. Well, I think that's probably about all we've got time for today. So thank you very much for joining us, and thanks to everyone who's tuned in on Twitch as well. You can go and check out Arca's Path on the show floor in the Rebellion stand. Yeah, I think. Yes. And yeah, so if you want to try out the game, head over there after this talk, and have a great EGX, everyone. Thank you very much.